Leslie Flint was born in London in 1911 and has been described by spiritualists as the most renowned psychic of the 20th century. Two researchers, Betty Green and George Woods, worked alongside Flint, where they recorded Leslie Flint's séance communications for over 20 years. The following conversation took place between a deceased man by the name of Mr. Olsen, who was a personal friend of both Betty Green, George Woods and Leslie Flint. Olsen was also interested in spiritualism and healing, and his passing was very sudden. However, in November 1967, he then returned to them in spirit, where he was able to communicate with them using Leslie Flint as the medium, where he describes the afterlife. The researchers started the interview with, "Hello, who's that?" And the spirit of Mr. Olsen replied with, "Good Lord, Olsen here? Oh, Mr. Olsen, hello." Olsen then said, "How are you both?" "Oh, very well, fine, thank you." They asked Olsen, "How are you getting on?" "Very well. No regrets. I'm very happy. I wouldn't come back if you offered me all the gold in China. I'm perfectly well and perfectly happy. And I can't tell you how marvellous it is to be dead." Olsen continued, "Well, I was very interested in all this, and I used to go to meetings with you. But that was a few years ago. My goodness me, people should think themselves lucky the day they kicked the bucket." They then asked Olsen, "What sort of condition did you find yourself in? What sort of place?" Olsen replied, "Well, as far as I'm concerned, the place in which I found myself was, the nearest one can say, is like some country place. It could be anywhere in a sense. I mean, there were trees and the birds, and just as if one was walking up in a country village. I realized that very soon afterwards, thousands and thousands of people, many, live in what you'd call apartment houses, vast buildings housing thousands of people. All sound rather like a large council estate, but nothing like that really. I think this place I first came to was a kind of reception station. It's the only way I can put it, because it is pretty obvious that quite a lot of people, when they first come, they do need help and attention. They need to be sort of helped through. It is a difficult period. They don't take to it in the beginning. The realization that they're separated from people they're close to and fond of on earth, when they realize that although they can return, they very seldom do. They have the opportunity to have a chat or to comfort people they know and love on earth. They soon begin to realize that they're not acknowledged and not welcomed. Of course, there's a great distress to people at first. That's why they do have these reception stations where there are advanced souls in attendance who know how to deal with these difficult cases, and in consequence, they're soon nurtured in a new way of thinking. I think the most difficult cases are those who have strong convictions, religious convictions, and a narrow outlook. Oh, we have community centres, and their children, of course, are one of the greatest joys. I've seen so many children who live with their people over here. Of course, many of them, their parents are still on earth, but they're taken in charge by people related to them, like a grandmother and so on. But if there is no close tolerant relationship, there are always souls here who'll take charge. And we have schools for them, and they learn all sorts of things, many of them more important than they learned at school on earth. Do you know that there are vast cities here? But also, you do get communities of people who, because of their nationality when on earth, they have the habit of clinging together or being together. This is usually, of course, a temporary thing with most of them. We have great halls of learning and of music. One can study any particular thing that appeals to one, mostly of an artistic endeavour, because it seems to me, I can realise that much more now, that art and the things of the mind and of the spirit are the things that are the most lasting, obviously. You see, this is a real world, but it's not a material world. Therefore, we don't have the material aspects like you do on earth. You don't get factories, for instance. You don't get railways and stations, and thank God you don't get all the noise, the filth and the dirt. Here, it is a world of absolute beauty, and there's the joy of progress in everything, the feeling of elation that comes with the realization that all the time you're stepping forward. There's always something new, something more interesting, some new experience, some new place to go, new people to visit, fresh arrivals come over from Earth, people we have known and loved, helping them to settle, getting them interested in all sorts of things over here. It's not a wishy-washy affair over here. It's not some sort of vague thing. It's a real existence, and we are in our own way as physical as you are. Yet, it's not a physical body as you have it. To all outward appearance, it may look the same, but it isn't. The construction is different. I mean, we are living on a vibration that is so far removed from Earth, and everything is rarefied in consequence, and everything that we do has a meaning and a purpose. Your world, to me, seems, well, it is as if there's a dark, dreary, foggy atmosphere. Of course, the thought forces emanating from your world, en masse, are so terrible. There's all this upset, hatred, bitterness, and malice. I wouldn't want to come back to it. This is a world of mental reality, which, by the very power that generates it, creates what you might call a physical condition or picturization of things. The more one sort of develops mentally and spiritually here, the more conscious and aware you become of other places, vistas, and people. It's just a matter of tapping the source and becoming, as it were, tuned into it. The researchers then asked Mr. Olsen, "How do you spend your time now?" And he responds with, "Time? Time? Well, we're not conscious of time. Time does not mean anything to us. But coming back to you, we're conscious of time to some extent. People say, oh well, I'm sure so-and-so will come back and speak because it's his birthday. Well, we couldn't care less in a sense about birthdays. In fact, we probably wouldn't even remember it was our birthday if it were not for the fact that we pick up on the idea or the thought from the consciousness of the individual near and dear to us on Earth." The discussion with Mr. Olsen lasted for half an hour, and then the signal weakened where they had to say goodbye to him. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit like. It really helps to keep the channel growing. And if you're new here, subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest videos. We've got lots of strange and fascinating stories coming up, and we'd love to have you along for the journey. The cell phone. A couple of months ago, my friend's cousin, a single mother, bought a new cell phone. After a long day of work, she came home, placed her phone on the counter and went to watch TV. Her son came to her and asked if he could play with the new phone. She told him not to call anyone or mess with text messages, and he agreed. At around 11:20 p.m, she was drowsy, so she decided to tuck her son in and go to bed. She walked to his room and saw that he wasn't there. She then ran over to her room to find him sleeping on her bed, the phone in his hand. Relieved, she picked the phone up from his hand to inspect it. Browsing through it, she noticed only minor changes, such as a new background, banner, etc. But then she opened up her saved pictures. She began deleting the pictures he'd taken until only one new picture remained. When she first saw it, she was in disbelief. It was her son sleeping on a bed, but the picture was taken by someone else above him, and it showed the left half of an elderly woman's face. Ghost Bro. My house was built in 1904. It's a single family home, wood frame, sitting on a concrete block foundation. I've been living here for about 12 years. Of all the weird things that my siblings and me have seen or heard in this house, this one event is my favourite. This happened to my brother. About 10 years ago, my brother and his best friends had started a garage band, playing mostly Spanish rock, alternative music, but in Spanish. His friends could only get together on Sunday afternoons. They would practice into the early evening, and they would usually call it quits by 8 p.m. This was a time I usually showed up and went to bed, because I worked the graveyard shift. Now this happened in late fall, so the days were getting shorter. They'd just finished a long session when the decision to head to someone else's house came about. My brother handed his car keys to his buddy so that they could load up the equipment. Everyone had filed out of the basement, but the tricky part was that they needed to walk all the way to the back of the basement and up the back stairs, through the kitchen doorway, down the hall, into the living room and out into the front porch. Everyone was outside sitting in my brother's truck, waiting for him. My brother was walking up the back stairs when he remembered that he'd left his pancakes in a to-go container sitting on a speaker in the basement. He made the decision to go back. Now, the basement is not clean, with full sight lines. There'd been partitions made, and the boiler and main heating unit are right smack in the middle. So after my brother walks back, he's about to retrieve his food container when out of the corner of his eye, he sees it. It is a shadowy figure right at his peripheral vision. This feeling of dread and uneasiness washed over my brother. We'd been taught that if you're in the presence of a spirit or ghost and you felt a bad vibe, to say a quick prayer or to cuss at it. My brother chose the latter. He basically just told, I don't have time for this shit. My brother started to walk to the back of the basement and briskly up the stairs, closing doors and turning off lights as he was walking out. The last light switch is on the opposite side of the door. Luckily, the door was open and the light from the street lamp was flooding the living room with its amber light. My brother said that he felt something at his back, but at no point did he turn around. As he flicked the last switch in the living room, it went dark, as did the rest of the house. As he stepped out, he pulled on the door, closing it behind him. Still holding his food container in one hand, he jogged down the few porch steps. He walked towards the front gate. Our house resides far from the main street, essentially having a large front yard but no rear garage. As he closed the gap between himself and his friend's laden truck, he kind of smiled and thought things over in his head, mad at himself for spooking out when there was no reason. He climbed into the driver's side of the truck, putting on his seatbelt and getting ready to pull out of the parking spot directly in front of the house, when one of his friends asked, "Hey, wait, what about your brother? Isn't he coming with us?" My brother answered, "What do you mean? He went to work early tonight. He's already gone. Do you see his car anywhere?" The next question they asked, "So then who was that walking behind you when you were leaving the house?" The rocking horse. One night when I was maybe 10 or 12, I had trouble falling asleep. My bedroom was the entire top floor of our house, with my bed and such being on the left hand and storage clothes and a play area being on the right. I was lying in bed when I heard a noise from the other side of the room and see a rocking horse begin to rock. It was sitting just outside one of the storage closet doors, proceeded to rock its way halfway across the room and stopped dead under the ceiling light. At this point, I was freaking out and I just buried my head under my blankets and never peeked out again until morning. It was all confirmed to not be a dream, as the rocking horse was still in the middle of my room when I woke up. Furthermore, I got a stern reprimand from my parents for being up out of bed playing with my toys well past my bedtime. Their bedroom was directly below the storage closet play area and had heard the creaking of the rocking horse shuffling across the room. The grandfather. My grandfather told me this story about one time he was sitting in a chair in front of the house, and when he heard his wife repeatedly calling him from inside the house. The thing is, my grandmother passed away a few years before that, but he told me that the voice was so pressing that he actually got up to look inside the house, and as soon as he got inside, he heard a loud crash behind him and turned around to see that the chair he'd been sitting in moments ago had been crushed by the cast iron gutter that fell on it. If he hadn't come into the house, he would probably have been seriously injured, or worse. I don't know if it's paranormal or not, but every time I think about it, it sends chills down my spine. The following. My older sister has a ghost that's followed her around for years. I lived with her once for about 3 months, and so much weird stuff happened in that time. All my sister would say to me when I mentioned it was that her ghost didn't like me being there. Things like going to bed with everything locked up and switched off, and waking up in the morning with the back door open, lights on, and the kettle switched on. One night my sister and I were getting ready to go out, and I'd asked to borrow her liquid foundation. I used it and put it back where she kept her makeup. 10 minutes later, she's asking me for it, and it was nowhere to be seen. She accused me of taking it and made me buy her a new one and refused to listen to my side of the story. About a year or so later, when she was packing to move to a new house, she found the makeup in a shoebox with some old letters. The shoebox was in a zipped-up suitcase that was underneath her bed. But probably the most scared I ever felt was one afternoon when I was the only one in the house, which never happened as 4 other people lived there. I'd arrived home from work and headed straight to the bathroom. All the doors, windows, etc. were closed. I was standing in the bathroom and started squeezing a pimple on my chin when a female voice in the hall said, "Stop picking your zits." It was loud enough and sounded real enough, and at the time I thought it was my sister. So I laughed and told her to piss off and asked what she was doing for dinner. No answer. I stuck my head out into the hall. There's no one there. I searched the house top to bottom and there was no one home. To become a police officer, a person goes through intense training on how to protect the public and themselves from danger. Many cops take considerable risks to defend others from some of the most terrifying situations. However, sometimes the threat isn't human. Sometimes the threat is paranormal. We found some real-life paranormal experiences recorded from the line of duty. These are 10 real-life stories from on-duty police officers taken from the officer.com forums. Number 10. The key holder. Myself and a buddy and my squad responded to an alarm. The incident location was an old office-type building that had been converted to doctors' offices. There was a pharmacy attached to it. Our dispatch received a motion signal from an upstairs office. Key holder arrives on scene and we go in to secure the building. The stairs were locked behind a door that, of course, the key holder didn't have keys to, so we took the elevator up to the second floor. Not the most tactical sound option, I know. Elevator opens to a pitch black hallway, except for one overhead light at the end of the hall. We start checking doors and so far all are secured. We get to the last office and sure enough the door is unlocked. We make entry and observe it to be an unused office. The door opened to a sizable waiting room and reception area. There are about 10 or 12 exam rooms, all cleared with no hiccups. We exit the office and immediately something seems off. That is when I realised the overhead light at our end of the hallway that had been on was now off, replaced by another light over by the elevators. I look at my squad mate and he is completely white. I ask him, what is wrong? And he says, weren't all those doors we just checked closed and locked? I tell him, yeah. So he says, well, now they're all standing open. Sure enough, all the officers down the hall we had just checked were now standing open. Adrenaline is racing at this point. So we start clearing offices and securing offices. We finish the last office and on our way out, just before we turn the corner to get into the waiting room, the main door just slams shut. Then our radios start going nuts with some kind of static feedback. Now, I just want to get the hell out of there. We get back to the elevator and head down to the first floor to make contact with the key holder. However, key holder is nowhere to be found. I contact dispatch and request a callback number for the key holder so I can advise him of what we found. Dispatch states that the key holder was still en route to us and should arrive in 5 minutes. I advised dispatch that we had already been out with the key holder. Dispatch requests I give them a call. I call dispatch and she tells me that there is no way we were out with the key holder. She states that the alarm company had only just made contact with one. Eventually, the real key holder arrives on scene and I ask her about the man that had left us in the building, the first key holder. She asked me to describe him, and so I did. She states that sounds like one of the doctors that used to lease the office on the second floor at the end of the hall. She then states that he had committed suicide at his summer home several days ago. I still won't go back there. Number 9. The abandoned hospital. A few years back, prior to being a peace officer, I worked as a security guard at a hospital. Sounds cool, and it was, except for the fact that it was 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. I worked alone, and the hospital I guarded was abandoned. A year prior, the hospital built a brand new facility to replace their 5-story tall 1900s building. When the employers and patients left, they left everything in place. It looked like the people just disappeared in a hurry. Partially full coffee mugs, uniforms hanging on coat racks, wheelchairs in the halls, everything as it was, with a good coating of dust. I was always a third shift kind of person. I don't get night jitters or scare easily, but this place could do it to the best of them. Every night I would walk or ride in a wheelchair through the halls that were supposed to be empty, unused. Every night I would end up having to close doors and relock them. I would walk one floor, move up to the next, and continue on. I got a little shaky when an hour after already walking a hallway, I would have to turn off the same hall lights and close the same doors again in the building. Or when I would be walking a hall, and then I would hear footsteps on the floor above me, doors opening and closing, elevators moving from floor to floor, phones ringing, nurse call lights going on, etc. There were only 3 times I got "I hate this shit" feeling. First time, I was checking offices on the 4th floor. There was a light on in a locked hallway. No surprise. This hallway hasn't been renovated since the place was built. Short of electricity, so everything was from the 1920s. Unlock the door, flip the lights, walk out, relock the door, and turn to leave. Behind me, I hear the flip of a light switch. Through the frosted glass, I see the lights went back on. I left the hallway alone that night. Second time was riding an elevator between floors. I was taking the elevator to the top floor, when at about the 4th or 5th floors I hear laughing and muffled talking. It kept getting louder as it got higher. Elevator makes it to the 5th floor, doors swing open, and absolute silence. Of course, every light was on the floor, even in the patient rooms. I checked high and low, not a single living and breathing person in that place, except for me. Third, and worst of all, it was just an average night. I'm on the lower level, locking a door in a corridor. The door had a glass middle, but on the backside it was covered by white tape. The room it led, it was dark, and the hallway a few feet behind me was partially lit, so the glass acted like a perfect mirror. Everything normal. Key and lock clicks, turning the key. When behind me I see the full outline of a person walk past me in the hallway. Clear as day, just a full shadow of a person walked past. I froze only for about a second and then ran into the hall after the supposed person. No one, just silence. Awesome gig, but after a year it felt like I should have been an exorcist with all this stuff happening. The other guards that worked on the days opposite to mine had the same stuff happen, except they always saw nuns walking into rooms just outside of an old rectory chapel on the 3rd floor. Number 8. Did you see Grandma? When I was a municipal cop, I was sent to a missing person runaway juvenile call. The town I worked in was inner city and poor, but it was one of the better streets in town, and the family was doing all right. The husband and wife were both educators. While I was taking the report of their runaway teenage daughter in the family living room, an older daughter who was in the room pointed towards the hallway and yelled, "Grandma!" The husband ran into the hallway yelling, "Ma! Ma!" The husband returned to the living room and asked, "Officer, did you see her? Did you see my mother?" I told him I had not and asked him why it was remarkable that his mother had walked down the hallway. Well, the husband replied, "She died last year. We see her walking around the house all of the time." I took the rest of the report while standing on the front porch. Number 7. The Eyes That Watch. I work for a tribal police department, and believe me, the spirits here can get to you. There is a section of Florida Road between Dade and Collier counties known as the Western Camps. Dade Collier Airport is located there. While on midnight shift, I was patrolling this area and called an area check. My radio worked absolutely fine. Just then, that commercial for the movie Fourth Kind played on my FM radio. I immediately became spooked. A couple of miles down the road, I called another check and got nothing but loud static. Since I was near the end of my check, I decided to turn around, and when I did, I froze. Tons and tons of eyes staring at me from in the water, in the trees, and on the road. I couldn't tell whether they were alligators or what, but I flew back east to familiar territory. Another officer who works with us said he was doing the same check and heard someone knock on the back window of his patrol car while he was stopped. He stepped out of the vehicle, with his weapon drawn, but saw absolutely nobody. I hate going out there. Number 6. This happened in the early 1980s when I was an officer with the Oklahoma City Police Department. One week I noticed that several officers' cars had Ghostbusters stickers stuck to the windows. I was confused and asked one of the guys, what was with all the Ghostbuster stuff? He told me that a few officers had been on a call recently where the occupants had complained of paranormal activity. I wasn't there, but my buddy said that when the officers arrived at the house, the residents were outside, terrified, while the sounds of banging doors and shattering glass came from inside the house. The officers thought an intruder was inside, so they brought a canine, Red, to help clear the property. Now, Red was the meanest damn dog you ever saw, but he absolutely refused to go inside the home. He growled and whined, but would not set a paw inside. Eventually, the crashing and banging noises stopped, and a few officers checked out the home. Everything inside was destroyed, but there was no one around. The residents claimed the sounds had suddenly started up when they were inside and had no idea what caused them. That story always gave me the creeps. None of the guys ever really talked about what happened because they were afraid everyone would think they were crazy. Number 5. The Shadow Man. I was sitting on the flat of a hill monitoring traffic. It was about 2 to 3 a.m. Where I was sitting, it's a well-known spot where an unsolved murder victim was found about 26 years ago. No other officers would sit here, even though citizens are constantly doing 15 to 20 miles per hour over the limit in this area. As I was sitting there, I saw a shadow cross the back of my unit, coming from the passenger side. Almost immediately afterwards, the shadow came up to the driver's side of my unit, then across the front. Mind you, it's completely dark in this area, and the only lighting around me is from the moon. Thinking the worst, I turn on all my lights to see who or what is around me. Nothing. I figured it was time to leave that area. Once I got to a lighted area, I stopped and realized that my camera was recording from where I hit my emergency lights. I reviewed the footage, and you can see where a figure starts from the driver front of my unit. Then, for half a second, the entire camera goes black, as if someone put their finger over the lens. Then it goes back to normal. Needless to say, I haven't sat back in that spot. Number 4, the haunted church. I used to work for a private police security firm as a patrol supervisor. On one of my patrol routes, we had a huge church that was also a private daycare and kindergarten. It was my responsibility to clear and secure the building every night between 3 and 4 a.m. due to recent instances of doors being found left open in the morning. In the early 1900s, the building was a schoolhouse, and supposedly a fire killed several children trapped inside. I didn't know any of this prior to working for the company. I only lasted about a week on this route prior to requesting that the church be moved to earlier in the shift. Several extremely creepy things happened while assigned to the church. My first night there, I just walked down the very long main classroom hallway to clear all of the rooms, and when I turned around to walk back up the hallway, there was a red balloon floating in the middle of the hallway that was definitely not there prior. In the old pastor's office, there was a lamp shaped like a lighthouse that sat on a table in a large window. When I would pull up to the church, the lamp would be the first thing I would see in the office window. It was always turned on. However, when I would go back to check and lock the pastor's office from the inside, the lamp would always be off. When I would get back into the car to leave, the light would be back on again. One weekend, the church was having a bake sale and the kitchen was full of plates of cookies and brownies, etc. There had been a note left on the door telling us, security, that we could help ourselves to anything in the kitchen within reason. I cleared the kitchen and noticed a large plate of chocolate chip cookies. I continued past the plate to clear the rest of the kitchen, and when I went back to the plate of cookies, there were only 3 left, where there had been once been at least a dozen or more. I also had the usual phenomena of previously closed locked doors being found open just seconds after closing and locking them. Another officer that filled in for me one evening quit the very next day because he reported that as he was checking the main chapel, the pipe organ started playing by itself. Number 3, the water tower. I got a call for an alarm at a new water tower they're building. Alarm company also has cameras on the site, so when the alarm activated, so did the cameras. The alarm company advised that there were 2 teenagers observed going under a sign. I was already in the area, so I was on scene quickly. The alarm company stayed online and said they have not passed the camera again. A few more units get there and we're checking the site for this sign. Well, we find it, but it's not a sign, it's a piece of construction equipment. And when you go under the sign, it leads to only one place, the entrance to the water tower. So we go inside and immediately hear people talking. We shine our lights towards the next landing and it stops. So we are giving commands, but get no response. We're considering climbing up the tower, but the ladder is being held on by a climbing gear carabiner, and we can't figure out their harness system. We call one of the workers, who takes a short while to get there. We're sitting inside the tower because it's cold, and decide to turn our lights off. After a minute, the talking resumes along with what sounds like someone walking or shuffling around. So we shine the light up and it stops. We do this 3 or 4 times and it's the same thing. Guy finally gets there, goes up the ladder, checks that level, then next level, then the actual bowl. No one was up there. Number 2, a school that isn't quite right. My senior colleague told me about this one school in Oahu, Hawaii, that has a statue. 2 officers were sent there because the alarm was going off and both walked past this statue that is outside on campus. The officers didn't find anyone inside the school, and after the case was finished, the 2 officers asked each other if either had seen the statue's head turning to look at them. Apparently, they'd seen it move. That same school is also notorious for having false alarms when the school is closed. The school installed a microphone in the classrooms, and during one call, picked up the laughter of children. Only the voices were shimmering or moving in and out. I can't describe it. I got sent to that school last week for an alarm going off in the classroom, and again the dispatcher said they could hear children. However, the school was closed, and there wasn't a kid around. The doors and windows were locked too. Weird. Number 1, the fallen officer. It was the 2nd week of April a few years ago. Around 2 a.m, a young junior female officer was coming off shift and walking to the locker rooms past an empty admin area. At that time of night, the office is all cleared out and can be eerie. She saw an older male officer standing there that she didn't know, and she said hello as she walked past. He ignored her, and when she looked back over her shoulder, he was gone. Of course she was creeped out, but told herself she was just tired and imagining things. A couple of days went by and she saw a picture of the same officer she had seen that night posted on a wall of fallen officers. That officer had killed himself with his service weapon a couple of years earlier. During the 2nd week of April, he used to have a desk near where she saw him. I didn't know him very well, as we have had a large department and we didn't work in the same areas. In all my dealings with him, he was very talented and skilled at his job and had a clear passion for it. It was a big loss. I just say, there's another one watching over us.